For the past 2 years, we've been bombarded with one message: Russia bad, Ukraine good. The Western media and political establishment have crafted a simplistic, almost comic book-like narrative where Vladimir Putin is the villain and Ukraine's government, led by Zelensky, is the noble defender of freedom and democracy. But as with so many global conflicts, reality is far more complicated than the headlines would have you believe. Let's start with some context. This war didn't begin in February 22, as many would have you think. The roots go back to 2014, where Ukraine's democratically elected government was overthrown in what many argue was a Western-backed coup. The new Western-leaning government took an aggressive stance against pro-Russian regions in the east, sparking a brutal civil conflict. Russia's annexation of Crimea wasn't some random land grab, it was a strategic and defensive move in response to what it saw as NATO encroachment on its borders. Now, let's talk about NATO. We've been told that NATO is a defensive alliance. But if that were true, why has it expanded eastward since the 1990s? Despite promises to the contrary, reality is that Russia has a legitimate security concern, ones that have been completely ignored by the West. Imagine if China or Russia started building military bases in Mexico. Would the US stand idly by? Of course not. Yet when Russia reacts to NATO forces creeping closer to its borders, it's painted as the aggressor. And then there's the issue of Ukraine itself. Zelensky has been hailed as a hero of democracy, yet his government has banned opposition parties, shut down critical media, and cracked down on dissent. Not exactly the beacon of free speech and liberal values we've been sold, is it? And what about the documented cases of neo-Nazi elements within Ukraine's military, particularly the infamous Azov battalion? These inconvenient facts are swept under the rug because they don't fit the narrative. Of course, none of this is to say that Russia is entirely innocent. Putin's government has its own authoritarian tendencies, and war always brings human suffering. But to pretend this is a one-sided conflict, with all the blame falling on Moscow, is disingenuous at best and dangerous at worst. The real question we should be asking is who benefits from this war? And the answer is clear. Western arms manufacturers, geopolitical strategists pushing for global dominance, and a political class that thrives on keeping tensions high. The Ukrainian people, they're just being used as pawns in a much bigger game. So before we swallow the mainstream narrative whole, let's ask ourselves, are we getting the full picture or just the version that suits those in power? Let me know in the comments and follow for more news, views and uncomfortable truths. For the past 2 years, we've